Hi, it's Nash from AlphaFi. Please smash that like, hit the subscribe. Today we're going to talk about a client question I get often. How long can I contribute into my Guardian policy? Will it mech? Will something bad happen? Because oftentimes I'll say that other companies may be better for longer period contributions. Well, I'm here to tell you that Guardian actually is a company where you can contribute for a long period of time. When I say that you're unable to contribute as effectively for a longer period of time, what I'm really talking about is particularly the split of base premium to PUA dollars going into the whole life policy. There's two places your money can go when contributing. One is base premium. That's what we minimize as much as possible to allow for minimal expenses, minimal whole life costs, which are quite costly, and we maximize the contribution going to PUAs or paid up additions, which maximizes your cash value, really juices up the guarantees and makes those guarantees very strong, and will compound year over year for you, providing for a very good short-term cash value situation and longer-term returns as well. As have been shown with prior policies that have been enforced for a long period of time, the proof of performance has shown that they perform much better. So, Guardian has some challenges in terms of contributing at a 1090 split for a long period of time. That's really what I meant to say in my prior videos. However, you can definitely contribute for a long period of time, and in most folks' case, they're kind of going to taper off their contributions into their policy after, let's call it the juice period or the overfunding period. But they still may want to contribute some amount, and so it's good to be aware of what's available with a really good company with a lot of payment flexibility, which is Guardian Whole Life. So let's jump into the policy design as proof here today. Okay, I have designed a 1090 split policy on a male, 45 years old, preferred non-tobacco, or NT, preferred health. There's a higher health rating, and then of course there's lower tier health ratings, but this is a decent health rating for a 45-year-old male. $10,000 going to base premium. The rest, or $90,000, going to PUAs or paid up additions, making for $100,000 total contribution into the policy for 15 years, and then we drop off of the such high funding, and we fund at a $20,000 amount until age 94. This is the Guardian L95 Life 95 product, meaning you can contribute until the 95th until you're age 95. So we can contribute until we're age 94 into this policy. That seems like a very long time, but I just wanted to show the maximum. This is a non-mech policy as well, so with that 1090, we're still able to contribute, basically as much as this policy will let us for an extremely long period of time. Of course, we could crank up the death benefit, increasing that mech limit, and it would allow us to fund even more into it. But for this exact design policy, we're showing kind of the maximum amount with the company limitations that it'll let us put in over these periods of time. So, $100,000 for 15 years, then dropping it down to $20,000. So that's age 45 to age 60. There's $100,000 going in, so $1.5 million. Then dropping it down to $20,000 contribution year over year until age 94. So a tremendous amount being put into this policy. Let's break it down even further. So that $10,000 is buying a whole life death benefit of $423,000. We are mixing it with a target additional benefit of almost $2 million, which totals up to the $3.585 million death benefit you see here. The $3.2 million is actually being covered partially by the PUA rider. It's about $1,700 in year one of 1 year term cost. So it's essentially a cost-effective way to raise that death benefit, which raises the MEC limit, the Modified Endowment Contract limit, or the IRS limit that they set, differentiating a whole life insurance policy or life insurance from investment. So we don't want to cross over that MEC limit, otherwise the IRS will essentially trigger unfavorable tax treatment on the policy, and the gains and accessing that will become taxable, and we want to avoid that because we want to be able to access the cash value through policy loans in a tax-free manner. All right, so and that 1 year term drops off every year because that whole life starts increasing with earnings and dividends, and so you don't need as much 1 year term. So that cost actually comes down over time until our 1090 funding is done. Then the term drops off altogether at age 60, which is good because if you wait long or you continue it longer than that, then the cost can get out of hand a little bit. So it's actually a very well designed policy in that regard in terms of timing of this person's life. And then we can continue contributing into base premium and PUAs just at a lower split. So when I said $20,000 going into the policy, we still have $10,000 going to base premium and another $10,000 going straight into PUAs. So that's a 50-50 split of base premium and PUA dollars. However, later in these policies, there's a lot more that the base policy premium is doing for you. A lot more coming back to cash value, and therefore it doesn't perform as poorly. Now, I am still a proponent and believer that full PUAs are going to give you more for your money. However, if this is the only option we have, it's good to know that later you can still contribute, and it's doing a lot more for you in the first couple of years. You can see here $10,000 going into the policy. If that's all we were putting in, we'd have about zero in cash value in the first couple of years. So after that, it gets much, much better. We are also able to add other living riders, so other riders you're able to take advantage of while you're alive. The Enhanced Accelerated Benefit Rider is a chronic and terminal illness rider that Guardian adds as long as this whole life death benefit is over $100,000. It's free to add. And what it is if you were to come down with a chronic or terminal illness, you would be able to access a portion of that death benefit early with qualifying triggers, and that would allow you to help pay for expenses and things like that you may be incurring, and to reduce the burden from your family. So a lot of people may look at another disability insurance policy. This is kind of a nice happy medium in between whole life and the ability to access that as well in case you were to come down with some sort of illness. And then an index participation feature. So I get asked a lot, hey, do you do IULs, or what do you think of IULs? Can you review my IUL? Well, the index participation feature is a feature that Guardian Whole Life will allow you to add for free. You can see it's set as 0% initial allocation. After policy year 3, you would be able to start allocating some of the money into the index participation feature, the IPF, which would essentially invest your money into S&P options index, just like an IUL would. And therefore, there's a cap and a floor, basically a cap of how much you can earn and a floor of how much you can lose, because it's an options. It's playing the options index, and therefore you could essentially earn more or less on the policy. So it's essentially getting a whole life policy with the ability to flip it into an IUL if you chose to do that. I personally keep my whole life or life insurance policy separate from my personal allocation of my net worth to, stock market or money markets or, those types of things, those investments. I keep them separate, but some people choose to combine them, and so it's a good feature to be aware of. Now we're scrolling down here. We're going to look at the rest of the policy in a little more detail. So I'm going to take a screenshot here so we can play around and mark it up. Alright, so this is that years 1 through 15 here. We see that $100,000 going into the policy for, actually it's 14 years. Then years 16 and on, we have $20,000 going into the policy, and we'll have to go to the new page and come down here, and all the way until age 94 you see that $10,000 still going to base policy annual premium, and $20,000 of net premium, meaning $10,000 going into PUAs. So a cumulative outlay, assuming you paid until age 94, is $2.120 million out of pocket, and at that time you would have almost 9.5 in cash value and over 10 million in death benefit. Now, this is a very long, healthy life, so let's look at age 80. At that time, you would have 1.8 million out of pocket with 5.3 million in cash value, 6.7 in death benefit. It grows substantially over the next 10 years because it's just such a big compounding snowball at that time that it's really putting in work for you. Then, since it's a whole life 95, essentially the policy becomes paid up, and no more premium is due out of the policy. And no more premium is due into the policy. So that whole life death benefit for this policy is paid up, and you don't have to contribute anymore. You've hit that amortization schedule. So, really quite intriguing that you can contribute that much money over that long a period of time with a 1090 split, then go into 50-50 due to company limitations without meching the policy. I also get that question a lot. If I continue to contribute at a 1090 split, will my policy eventually mech? So we just looked at that. The answer is no. Actually, there's a lot of testing we do to make sure that isn't the case, so that when we put a policy in force, we can rely on it for a long period of time over our lives. Now, let's look at the numbers in Excel like I love to do. So we have our normal policy year, age of the client, minimum payment, so you can see that we've designed it for maximum cash value. Guardian's a very flexible payment company, and so the minimum payment on this policy is really $11,875, and you can essentially pay for a minimum of 7 years, probably a few less, and then from year 8 we could technically reduce paid up it or cut the need to pay any more base policy premium into the policy. That would essentially drop the death benefit down, but it would keep your policy intact, and the earnings and dividends would keep compounding for you. So this is technically kind of just showing, hey, what is the minimum amount we could pay into this policy with it still staying alive, but if life happens and I just can't contribute 2 point whatever million that we were just looking at until I'm 94 years old. So I like to show what's the minimum, what's the maximum. You have a lot of room to run in between those two guard posts, okay? So I took a few years off because you could technically do premium offset. What that means is your earnings and dividends are paying for your base policy premium before you have to do it, or before you're able to do a reduced paid up after the 7 pay period or 7 years to abide by the MEC testing. Then you can RPU in year 8. All right, this is your maximum payment that we were looking at. We have our guaranteed values and our current dividend values, which the dividend was declared at 5.75 in 2023 by Guardian. That actually ticked up by 0.1% from 2022 to 2023. I'm hoping at the end of this year they're going to declare another tick up, because generally and historically they've trended with interest rates, and as we know in 2022, 2023, the interest rates have been going way, way up. So insurance companies move very slow, but they do tend to track with the general interest rate environment. So hoping to see that. All right, so you see this $100,000 out for 14 years, then dropping down to $20,000. Again, it's a 1090 until policy year 14, then it goes to 50-50. But you can see that the IRR actually jumps out here when we start going to a 50-50. That's just because of where we're at in the policy timeline, as well as the PUAs, the contribution type we have on here. There's 2 types. This type is the standard PUA, which essentially has a 10% load or 10% grab of the contribution to pay for some of the expenses of the PUA rider, but also, and more importantly, taking that and shoving it into their investment account as working capital to generate long-term potential returns. Okay, So there's a lower contribution there, and as I said, as you continue to contribute, the cash value that's coming back from base premium dollars gets higher and higher. So that's good to see. Essentially, this isn't going to hurt us if we continue to contribute. The IRR looks very healthy. Now it would jump up even more if we RPU'd it, meaning reduce paid up it, meaning cut off the need to pay more into this policy. However, that also would not allow us to put as much into it. So pros and cons. We're looking at how much can we contribute over a long period of time. This policy breaks even between years 5 and 6. Again, it's got the normal PUA or the long-term PUA performance option. If it had the short-term performance option, the load or the amount that is reserved by the company is 5%. Therefore, the break-even would be between years 3 and 4, and there would be less working capital the company reserves for long-term potential returns. So the cash value would be about 5% higher in earlier years until about year 10, and then it would start to fall behind these numbers here. So definitely a trade-off of whether you want the money now or you want the long-term returns. Okay? So let's look at this. Major milestones here: age 65, age 70, age 75, age 80, age 85, and we'll just highlight these. Okay, and we've got, with an out-of-pocket of $1.5 million at age 65, we have $2.5 million in cash value, $4.4 million almost in death benefit at age 70, $1.6 million out of pocket, $3.3 in cash value, $5 million in death benefit, and it just continues to climb here. So highlighting these major milestones, this policy looks quite intriguing, quite good, and as I said, the further out you get, the more it just begins to hockey stick and compound and take off for you. So, and look at this year-over-year growth. That's the last column here. Represents the net IRR, but this is the dollar value. So much net growth going on in your cash value. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per year that it's growing by. So really strong as we get out to those later years. I did take the ledger statement, some key columns, and I wanted to put it in here. So essentially this statement, I took most of the columns, dumped those in Excel as well. So what I wanted to show was this end of year dividend. We might see here that really there's no dividend in year 1. You might ask, what's going on? Is there no earnings in the first policy year? Remember, there's a guaranteed return as well as the non-guaranteed dividend. So in year 1, there's no dividend, but the guaranteed return is still there. So that's what's going on. Most companies do that. Then they'll start to pay the dividend from the following year. The other thing I wanted to point out is that some people will hone in on the dividend. Hey, what's my dividend? Well, the dividend at age 60 is projected to be $45,000. But again, that's just the non-guaranteed dividend. What is my net growth on my cash value? That means on this policy, the guaranteed rate is 3%. So you have 3%. The surplus dividend, because the dividend total is 5.75, meaning the dividend surplus is 2.75. Really, 3% is bigger, and that's going to actually do more work for you than the dividend will. So the guaranteed rates are very important, and you should always look at those. Well, the net growth, meaning all expenses and fees have been paid for, and this is your net cash value growth in the same year, is $84,718. The dividend is basically about half of that. So, very important to understand what is my net growth or net IRR. That's why I look at this so much, because the dividend is really, isn't the full picture for you. It's very important, but it's not the full picture. Those guaranteed earnings and the net growth is what I really like to look at. Let's compare it as we get further out here. So this was age 85. So what's our dividend column? All right, our dividend here is $186,000, but our net growth is almost $260,000. So again, dividends are growing, becoming quite attractive, but the total net growth on cash value is much, much greater. All right. Then we talked about that 1-year term. This is that 1-year term death benefit decreasing over time. So we started out at a cost in year 1 of $1,700. We'll see how it drops down by a couple $100,000 every single year. Those earnings and dividends are set up to buy more paid-up additional whole life insurance. PUAs have a death benefit and they have a cash value associated with them right away. That's why, they're so powerful. And that death benefit is whole life, so the whole life death benefit's increasing, so that 1-year term isn't required to be as high every single year, so it's going down. So that 1-year term cost is going to be going down substantially over time, essentially crossing over the policy and eventually going to zero, maximizing the efficiency. And that's how we design these to be minimize the fees, maximize efficiency for maximum growth, both for cash value and death benefits for you. Okay? And I think that's all I wanted to show on this long contribution guardian policy on a 45-year-old male, preferred health. Let me know if you have any questions or if this was helpful. Please drop a comment or another question to give me motivation to create more content for you. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, you can learn more at alphacrusaders.com at the link at the end of this video.